All right, let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to today's Virtual Fairs demo webinar. Happy Thursday. My name is Britt Gergen. I'm going to be emceeing today's event. We're really excited to take some time with you today to talk through our virtual fair tool and give you a sense of how it works and what it looks like for career services, employers, and students. The goal really is to show you a basic walkthrough of everything, and we're really aiming to help you better understand what the tool looks like if you didn't happen to use it this fall, if you're brand new to Handshake, or perhaps if you used it to host a fair in late August and you want to see some of the new things that have rolled out. So yeah, again, thanks so much for joining us, and we can jump to the next slide where I will introduce my co-presenters. So again, my name is Britt Gergen. I'm a product marketing manager here at Handshake. That's me on the left. And I am joined by two of my wonderful colleagues. We'll start with Gabe. Gabe, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Dobson, and I am a relationship manager on the education success team.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. And Christopher, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, my name is Christopher. I am also a relationship manager alongside Gabe.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide and talk through today's agenda. It's a really simple one. We're going to start with an overview of virtual fairs on Handshake. So we'll talk about a couple of things. We'll talk about some high-level stats on virtual fairs from this past fall. We'll talk about the basics of how virtual fairs work. And then we'll talk about some of the resources that are going to be available to you to help you get up and running with virtual fairs. Next, we'll do a walkthrough of virtual fairs. So we'll talk about what the experience is like for career services, employers, and students. And for part of that, we'll be jumping into the product itself to show you what the experience looks like. And then we will wrap up with some Q&A. Now, before we move forward, I do want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items because I know there'll be important questions on your mind. First, we are recording this webinar, and anyone who registered for the webinar is going to get it as a recording after the event. The email will likely go out tomorrow, but you will get a recording. And if you had colleagues who registered but weren't able to attend, they will get the recording as well. The recording will be shareable, so you can send it to anybody else you'd like. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. I also wanted to call out that, as you can see, we'll have time for Q&A at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask your questions. The Zoom webinar has a Q&A option where you can submit questions. And while my colleagues are presenting today, I will be on the back end helping answer some of them, as many of them as I can, actually. And then when we get to the Q&A portion at the end, we will discuss a few of the top questions verbally. So please feel free to start using that to submit your questions. And again, it's just the three of us on the webinar today, so we'll do our best to get to every question. But if yours goes unanswered, know that we apologize for that. We're doing our best. And you can always reach out to your relationship manager or our support team to discuss virtual fairs in more depth. So again, be on the lookout for a recording of the webinar after today's session and submit your questions as they occur to you. And with that, I am now going to pass it over to Gabe.
Thanks, Britt. So hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Dobson. Once again, I'm a relationship manager on the education success team. And we wanted to start today by discussing our learnings for the fall. So next slide, please, Christopher. So let's start with the news you want to hear. Virtual fairs will be free in Handshake for spring 2021 semester. We heard how valuable of a tool our virtual fair has been for our employers, students, and career services partners, and we've committed to keeping that pricing free for career service related programming. So if you have programming outside of career services related needs, please reach out to your relationship manager to discuss to see if we can provide you service that way. Next slide. So let's talk about this fall. We had overwhelming success this fall with our virtual fair tool. Over 700 colleges and universities hosted fairs in Handshake, and over 2,300 fairs were hosted in total, making over 1 million meaningful student-employer connections. Next slide, Christopher. But facilitated connections don't matter if the audio video solution that you're utilizing is subpar. And after each virtual fair, employers and student participants receive a survey to rate our video performance. Both our employer and our student users constantly rate Handshake's video experience highly with a 4.2 and a 4.4 out of 5 respectively. Next slide. So one of our partners, Cynthia Downing, said this about the virtual fair tool. This semester, our fall 2020 Career Awareness Fair allowed us to serve over 1,600 students and 300 employers, leading to over 10,000 connections, a metric we were only able to guess in previous years. The system allowed us to generate pre-career fair student and employer demographic reports to share with campus stakeholders, including the deans and the chairpersons. This led to an increased participation and buy-in from colleges. So really great feedback there. Thank you, Christopher. So let's talk about our guidelines for our virtual fair usage. So for our employer partners, there are no limit on the total number of employers that can be invited. And then each employer can have up to 100 reps participate in a fair. For our students, there's no limit for student attendance. Students are able to attend as many non-overlapping sessions as time permits. For your time spent, we recommend fairs run between 3 and 6 hours, and we found that 3 hours is the sweet spot for students and employers based on their feedback. Our group sessions can accommodate up to 50 students per session. And then our time per session, we have 2 different session types. Our one-on-one sessions are 10 minutes per session, and our group sessions are 30 minutes per session. Group sessions are more broad for employers to pitch to students, explain details of their organization, or reach a broad audience. And our one-on-one sessions are more intimate sessions with a single student and a single employer. Employers have the option to set qualifications to dictate which type of students can sign up for each session. Employer representatives attending the fair configure their own schedules with group and one-on-one sessions. And schools per day, we have no limit of schools that can host a fair per day on Handshake. Schools can also come together to host multi-school fairs and even include students from non-Handshake partner schools through our Handshake Open Network. So let's discuss some of our career services resources to help you as you plan and execute your virtual fair. Our virtual fair launch kit contains materials to help you plan, promote, and launch your virtual fair in Handshake, including how-to guides, invite email templates, comprehensive step-by-step videos for career services, employer and students, and recorded webinars. We also will bring back our virtual fair office hours in the spring to provide additional support for our career services and employer partners. I also wanted to discuss some of the updates we've made since our late July launch in our virtual fair tool. We've added several highly sought features since our original launch, including the ability for employers to edit and transfer schedules, the addition of real-time session management page for our career services teams, and the ability for students to sign up for available sessions after a fair begins. We'll talk about some of these updates in today's walkthrough in a few slides, but you can get a readout all about our virtual fair updates in our release notes. The release notes have been updated throughout the fall and as new updates were released, and we'll keep updating them as we create updates in the spring as well. So office hours. Our office hours for career services and employers will start weekly on January 13th for employers and January 14th for our career services users. It's an opportunity for you to get a quick overviews of recent product updates, to ask product experts any questions that you might have, or to share best practices with your peers. And lastly, I just wanted to read a quote from our partner, Katrina Schrieffer. Thank you to Handshake team for sharing so many fantastic virtual affair training and marketing resources. This has made launching our virtual fair so much easier. I also greatly appreciate all the one-on-one time you're dedicating to employers. That would fall on my shoulders, and it's a relief to have the extra support from Handshake. So with that being said, let's turn over to the demo portion of our presentation. Christopher, take over.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. So for anyone who joined late, hello, my name is Christopher Merchant, and I'm a relationship manager on the education success team alongside Gabe. For the next part of our presentation, I'd like to give an overview of our virtual fair experience for schools, employers, and for students. So first, let's talk about the experience for schools. The first thing that I would say is that virtual fair setup is very similar to setting up an in-person fair. All you have to do is mark your fair as virtual and say that it's being managed in Handshake, and it's a virtual fair. You still manage employer registration approvals and payments the same way. And one of the additional things that you can do now is monitor employers' schedule creation and student signups in real time. What I'm going to do for this next section is share my screen. We do have a placeholder here of what this screen looks like, but I want to show you how you can see day of sessions in real time. So I'm actually going to jump out of the presentation and show you what a virtual fair looks like. So right now what we're looking at is the landing page for a virtual fair. If I navigate over to the right, you can see that I can view session details. So at a glance, I can see the total number of group sessions, one-on-one sessions, and field sessions that we have for this fair. When I click into this, you can see I can view all upcoming sessions for my virtual fair on this screen. On the day of the fair, I can see what sessions are happening right now and which ones are coming next. I can also see who is hosting them. And I can also see which students have registered and whether the employer or students have no-showed. I can also use this filter on the left-hand side to filter by particular employers and students. One thing that I do want to point out is that while this list is happening in real time, you do need to click this refresh button to ensure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. So jumping back into the presentation. In some ways, virtual fairs have advantages over in-person fairs. That's one of the things that we've discovered. Here, Matt at Appalachia State shared that all his work on the school side is covered during configuration, so before the day of the fair, resulting in things being less stressful on the actual day of the fair. See that he explicitly points out less hassle and stress than compared to an in-person fair. Following the fair, you can use our pre-built virtual fair reporting templates to get all the info you need, including total connections, no-shows, and session attendance. You can also customize these reports and share them out with your colleagues. I'll also note that our team just released a virtual fair benchmark report that came out yesterday that shares student and employer engagement trends across all the fairs hosted on Handshake this fall. We'll include that in our follow-up email in the webinar, so be on the lookout. Great, so now let's take a look at the employer experience. Once you've approved an employer's registration, they'll automatically be prompted to create their schedules. This includes both their one-on-one schedules and their group sessions. It's important to note that everyone who attends a virtual fair must have a Handshake account, and each person sets their own schedule. If your employer wants to invite a colleague who doesn't yet have a Handshake account so that they can attend the fair, they can easily add them to Handshake using this button. So right from their virtual fair configuration, they can invite new teammates so they can set up their schedules. After employers build their schedules, most of their work lives on this schedule tab. So as you can see here, they have a variety of tabs. The schedule tab is where they do most of their work. From here, they can view and edit all of their sessions. They can test their audio and video ahead of the fair, and they can launch sessions by clicking Join Video. I want to make a special call out to this test Handshake video option. This video test option was very popular in the fall, and it's a great way for employers to ensure that their sessions run smoothly. Finally, employers can use the RSVP tab to view students registered for their sessions at the fair, to review their profiles and resumes, and to message those students before or after their sessions. This is a great way for employers to keep track of who they're meeting with and encourages them to stay connected. All right, now let's talk about the student experience. Great, so students can sign up for and attend virtual fairs using the device that works best for them, because virtual fairs are available on desktop and via our mobile apps on iOS and Android. All right, so now I'm going to jump out of this presentation again and show you the view from the student experience. So getting back into this fair, I'm going to switch over to the student view. So you can see here that when I go to the landing page as a student, there's a banner that's telling me that I have a fair today, and I can go directly to my schedule. By clicking on that schedule tab, I can see the sessions I've already signed up for and the others that are available. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that I'm signed up for a one-on-one, but that I also have an open slot here where I can sign up for open sessions. It's important to note that students can register for sessions ahead of the fair, and they can also add or remove sessions during the fair, which allows them to change their mind while the fair is ongoing. For this session that's happening now, all I have to do to join it is click Join Video. You'll see here that it will open a tab. And I'm brought to this screen before I join the fair, where I can check my audio and visual and decide whether I want to share video or be muted. Awesome. So I will jump now back into our presentation. Great. So our schools are not the only ones who have noticed the advantages of virtual fairs over in-person fairs. One is that students don't have to wait in line and they don't feel rushed when they're in their one-on-one sessions. If we look at this quote, it says the one-on-one meetings were great because they were efficient, the video quality was good, and rather than standing in line all day, you got to speak comfortably to people at your allotted time. So great to hear that feedback. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening. I'll now pass it back over to Britt to move on to the Q&A session so we can answer all of your burning questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much to both Christopher and Gabe for walking us through all of that. I know that was a lot of information, so I hope you all found it helpful and easy to follow. And we have about 10 minutes now for Q&A. So definitely take some time to throw your questions into the Q&A box that Zoom provides, and we will happily answer them for all of you. And thanks to everyone who has submitted questions so far. Let's start off with a great one. And Gabe, you touched on this, so I want to throw this one to you. The question is, can multiple schools host a fair together?
So one school has to be the main owner of the career fair, but multiple schools can work together in collaboration. What I would suggest if you want to do a multi-school fair is to reach out to your relationship manager. We can help you walk through that process, and then we can make sure that those students can get on there and help facilitate the transfer of data from one career services team to the other.
Awesome. And I'll say too that the very first virtual fair we ever hosted was actually a multi-school fair. So the Big East hosted a fair for their students at the very end of July, and it went super well. And since then, we've seen a ton of other schools kind of coming together and hosting fairs on Handshake as well. Okay, another really good question. So Jenny said, my biggest concern is students signing up ahead of time and knowing what to do in a virtual career fair. Do you provide resources for that? That's a great question. I can take this one. The answer is yes. We have a ton of training and marketing collateral for you in the virtual fair launch kit. And we knew that, I mean, for everyone, this is a new experience. For career services, for employers, and for students. So there is, you know, a little bit of getting used to the new platform and how it works. So we wanted to make sure that schools had a ton of great looking, super easy to follow pre-built assets to teach employers and students how to use the platform. So we have all kinds of stuff from short videos on how to use virtual fairs to walkthrough guides to even like quick little social assets you can share as well that are all centered on educating students on how to navigate the fair. And I'll say too that this question was also something that was tackled by our product team as we were building this tool. So we knew that we needed to make it really easy for students to find the fairs, understand what sessions were available, sign up for them, et cetera. So there were a couple of things actually that Christopher showed in his demo that help illustrate the work that we've done on that front. If you noticed when he logged into Handshake, there was a banner at the top of the screen that takes you directly to the fair. That banner shows up for students on the day of the fair, so it's really easy for them to navigate there. We have prompts and help text in the experience itself that talks about signing up for sessions, and a lot of other really great things that are aimed at helping students understand how the workflow works and get them connected with employers that are relevant to them. So it's a great question. I hope that answered it. If you could use some more clarification, please feel free to write in again. Awesome. Let's see. So again, please feel free to continue using that Q&A section to ask any questions that you have. And let me just see what we want to, which one would be best to address next. Excellent. So Melba asked a good question about multi-school fairs and the student information from across multiple schools. So the information itself, and I have to, I might actually need to tap my co-host to help with this. I believe the controlling institution is able to see the names of attendees from other schools, but most of the information is masked. Gabe or Christopher, do you happen to remember the exactly how that works? It's a really good question and something that I know we've addressed. It might even be something good to follow up on with Melba.
Yeah, I think, this is Christopher, I think Gabe mentioned this earlier, but I believe that the hosting institution is the one that controls or sees all the student data. Happy to test and confirm that following the call, but I believe that's the functionality there. Gabe, I know you touched on that earlier. Does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Awesome.
Awesome. Great. We got another great question from Jenny. Jenny said, on the day of the fair, what is the career services staff doing? Are we having to manage things through the platform? This is a really good question. And the nature of what career services is up to during the fair is different from an in-person fair. And Christopher, I want to call on you to talk a little bit about the session details page and what that allows you to do during the fair. And then maybe we can talk a bit about how schools have spent the duration of the fair in addition to using that page.
Sounds good. I'm actually going to leave this screen and jump back to that view. Forgive me, I have a kitten crawling in my face, so give me one moment while I do that. Okay. Let's see. Great. So I'm just going to switch back to the career services view here. Okay, and I'll go to that fair that's happening. Actually, you can just look at it right now from this banner. So to show people another way to get here, I know I just clicked on that banner on my landing page, but if I back out to my fair, over the fall, we released this tab called Session Details. So during the day of the fair, many schools are viewing their session details. And they're able to see a few things that we called out earlier. So you can see here events or sessions that have already happened, right? So these that are grayed out are sessions that have already happened. And then in chronological order, we can see the events or the sessions that are in progress and the sessions that are going to begin in the future. There are a few different ways that schools use this during the day of the fair. One is to note their no-shows, right? So since this is a test fair, it's not actually happening. Everyone is showing up as a no-show. So they're able to monitor when students or employers have not shown up. Additionally, they're able to see which sessions do not have any students registered. So under this column, if you see NA, it means that no students have registered for that session. It's a great way to promote to students, hey, we have this session coming up at 10 a.m. It's a group session at Eastleigh West Labs. Consider signing up for this. And then additionally, if you have feedback from an employer where they're saying, hey, one of my group sessions it only has 4 people in it or something like that, you're able to search specifically by employer so that you can see only their sessions upcoming. So if I click on that, you'll see that it filters down to just their sessions so that I could promote this one that's upcoming that students have not registered for. This is a doomsday scenario when you're seeing that no one has registered. It's not actually like this during a virtual fair. Folks do sign up and attend.
And I'll say too that another cool way I've heard of schools using this on the day of the fair is to keep an eye on the sessions that are in progress. And if they do spot a no-show, either on the student or the employer side, they'll reach out to that person to make sure that things are running smoothly. So they'll usually have one person, committed to doing that, just keeping an eye on things. I believe what that school told me was that 3 to 5 minutes into the session, if someone was still a no-show, that's when they would reach out. And then I'll say too that the other main thing that schools have been doing during the fair is to host a separate support session for students and employers. Most are doing this through a platform like Zoom and sharing the link out with students and employers ahead of the fair, and basically just hanging out and being on call if anyone wants to drop in and ask questions. And from what I've heard, it's been a mix of questions to help with, just navigating Handshake, and also from students, especially questions about how to present themselves in a virtual format. So it's a great way to stay connected with students and employers. And another great tip that we've gotten from a lot of schools is that you should open up those support rooms an hour before the fair, because as everyone's preparing for the day, that's when they will actually have their questions. And that way you can knock them all out before the fair starts. Everyone pretty much said that once the fair starts, the stream of people coming into the room quiets down pretty dramatically. We've also had some schools do training sessions ahead of the fair as well. That's getting a little bit away from the question, but it's another great way to just make sure that everybody from an employer and student perspective has had that customer service touch of, extra information from you all, which you can of course do in addition to sharing the materials that we've created with them.
Yeah, Kate, or Britt, I'm glad you brought that up. I know you said it's getting away from the question, but I actually think it's super helpful. So this is Christopher again. I have seen plenty of my schools making test fairs in advance so they can play around with these tools so they don't feel like they're doing that on the day of for the first time. But great call out. And then you mentioned that folks are using Zoom or other tools to have sort of support rooms off to the side. I've jumped into a few of those over the course of the fall, and literally within like the first 7 minutes, that's when most of the questions are asked. So that's the trends that I've seen, at least with the schools that I work with.
Awesome. Well, great. Let's see. Oh, one more question from Jenny, because this is a good one, and then we'll sign off. So Jenny said, so the employers set up schedules and send the students the link to their video conference, and do they use whichever platform they like? This is a great question. So video support is available directly through Handshake. So they do not have to set up all of their sessions on different platforms. They set up their schedule in Handshake, and the video is hosted in Handshake. They do have the option to switch to an external video provider if they want to, use something like Zoom, but we highly recommend using our video platform. It's super reliable, good quality, and it reduces confusion because students don't have to get pulled out of Handshake in order to attend. So by default, everything is hosted within Handshake, though employers do have the option to use an external platform if they want. And with that, we are at time, so we will wrap things up. And thank you everyone for coming, for asking your great questions. Be on the lookout for the recording, again, coming to you very soon via email. And look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. Have a great one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.